Hello everyone, welcome back to Beer HR. Grab your drink, pull up a chair. This is episode number 8, HR technology and AI. Is this opportunity or threat? We are going to discuss 5 major points in this episode. Point number 1, role of AI in recruitment. Point number 2, people analytics. Point number 3, predictive retention models. Point number 4, HR systems like Workday or Oracle. Point number 5, ethical concerns in AI hiring. Let's dive into point number 1, the role of AI in recruitment. Let me start with a scene. It's 2012. A recruiter at Unilever is sitting in front of a mountain of resumes, thousands of applications, limited time, and less screening. Fast forward a few years, that same company transformed its graduate hiring process. Instead of beginning with the CV screening, candidates now complete online games designed to assess cognitive ability and problem solving. Then AI powered video interviews analyze language patterns, tone, and communication style before a human recruiter ever steps in. What was the result? Hiring team reduced by nearly 75%. Thousands of recruiter hours saved, and more importantly, a broader, more diverse talent pool. That is the power of AI in recruitment when used thoughtfully. Now let's look at another story. At LinkedIn, AI doesn't just match keywords. It predicts a candidate job fit based on skills, career trajectories, and behavioral patterns across millions of data points. So instead of asking who has this exact job title, AI asks who has adjacent skills and is likely ready for this next step. That shift changes everything because the best candidate may not have the perfect title, but they may have the perfect capability. AI expands the talent lens. At IBM, AI powered chatbots answer candidate questions 24 by 7. Where is my application status? What is the job description again? What are the benefits? Instead of recruiters spending hours replying to repetitive queries, AI handles a transactional layer. That frees recruiters to focus on what truly matters, like building relationships, assessing culture fit, advising hiring managers, creating better candidate experiences. AI doesn't replace recruiters, it elevates them. But here is where the story gets complicated. Several years ago, Amazon experimented with an AI recruiting tool trained on historical hiring data. What was the problem? Historical data reflected historical bias. The system began favoring resumes that mirrored past hiring patterns, unintentionally disadvantaging certain groups. Amazon eventually scrapped the tool. That moment was important. It reminded organizations worldwide AI is only as unbiased as the data it learns from, which means HR must lead ethical AI conversations, not just IT. Now imagine this. At companies like Workday, people analytics tools can predict attrition risk based on engagement scores, tenure patterns, compensation data, and internal mobility trends. Instead of reacting to resignations, organizations can anticipate them. Instead of scrambling to hire after someone leaves, recruiters can proactively build pipelines. AI turns recruitment from reactive to productive. That is a strategic advantage. Here is the key distinction. AI should inform decisions, not make them alone. The best organizations use AI to shortlist candidates, identify skill gaps, reduce administrative work, analyze hiring trends. But the final decision who will take is still human because recruitment is not just data, it is judgment, it is context, and it is emotional intelligence. And no algorithm can fully evaluate leadership presence, resilience, or cultural contribution. The real story isn't about robots replacing recruiters. It is about smarter hiring systems. Imagine skills based matching instead of degree filtering, reduced unconscious bias through structured AI screening, personalized candidate experiences, faster data backed decisions. AI helps organizations hire for capability, not just credentials, but only when HR leads with governance, ethics, and human oversight. So, bottom line is AI in recruitment is neither a miracle nor a threat. It is a tool. Used carelessly, it can amplify bias. Used strategically, it can democratize opportunity. The companies winning today aren't asking, will AI replace recruiters? They are asking, how can AI make our recruiters more strategic, more human, and more impactful? Because at the end of the day, recruitment is still about people choosing people. AI just helps us choose better. Let's dive into the point in number two, people analytics. Let me take you back to 2008. Inside Google, leaders had a question: what makes a great manager? It sounds simple, but instead of relying on opinion or seniority, Google did something radical. They studied it. They analyzed performance reviews, team engagement scores, retention data, and productivity metrics. They interviewed employees. They looked for patterns. This became Project Oxygen. What was the result? They identified specific behaviors that consistently predicting high performing managers like coaching, empowering teams, and clear communication. When Google trained managers based on those insights, team performance improved measurably. That is people analytics in action, not gut feeling, not hierarchy, only data. For many years, HR data meant spreadsheets, headcount, attrition rate, time to hire. But people analytics goes deeper. It will ask, why are people leaving? What predicts high performance? Which teams are at risk of burnout? What leadership behaviors drive engagement? At Microsoft, people analytics played a critical role during its cultural transformation under Satya Nadella. As Microsoft shifted toward a growth mindset culture, analytics teams measured collaboration patterns, engagement data, and leadership behaviors to track whether the culture was truly changing. It wasn't just words, they tracked the shift and performance followed. Now imagine this scenario. A high performing employee suddenly resigns. Leadership is shocked. But what if you could see it coming? At companies using advanced analytics platform like Workday, predictive models analyze patterns such as declining engagement scores, lack of promotion or progression, compensation gaps, reduced collaboration. When those indicators combine, they signal attrition risk. Instead of reacting to resignation letters, HR can intervene early. A career conversation, a leadership adjustment, a compensation review. Prevention is always cheaper than replacement. But here is where it gets interesting. People analytics isn't about replacing empathy with numbers, it is about enhancing it. At IBM, analytics models have been used to predict flight risk with a surprising accuracy. But IBM doesn't just look at the prediction score, they ask what conversation needs to happen. Data doesn't replace leadership, it prompts a better leadership. Let's talk recruitment. At LinkedIn, Talent Insights data helps organizations understand where certain skills are concentrated geographically, how competitive a role is, which industries are losing talent, salary benchmarks. Instead of guessing hiring strategies, organizations use a labor market intelligence. It transforms a recruitment from transactional to strategic workforce planning. But there is a cautionary side. Data can empower or it can overreach. If organizations start tracking everything, emails, collaboration frequency, activity logs, employees may feel monitored rather than supported. Then what is the lesson? Transparency matters, ethics matter. Employees should understand what is being measured, why it is being measured, how it benefits them. People analytics must build trust, not erode it. Traditional HR reporting answers what happened. People analytics answers why did it happen? What will happen next? What should we do about it? That is a massive shift. It moves HR from admin function to strategic advisor. When HR can say, if we don't improve engagement in this situation, we risk losing 20% of our top performers in the next 12 months. That is influence. Bottom line is, people analytics isn't about turning employees into data points. It is about understanding patterns that humans alone cannot see. The best organizations don't replace judgment with dashboards. They combine data, leadership insight, and emotional intelligence. Because at the end, data tells you where to look, leaders decide what to do, and when those two work together, that is when HR becomes a true strategic partner. Let's dive into point number three of this episode, predictive retention models. Let me tell you a story. A global tech company was celebrating record profits. Revenue was up, customer growth was strong, but quietly something dangerous was happening. High performers were leaving, not average performers, not underperformers, but the top 10%. And the leadership didn't see it coming. By the time exit interviews happened, it was already too late. Now contrast that with what companies like IBM started doing. Instead of waiting for resignations, IBM built predictive models to identify employees at a risk of leaving months before they submitted notice. They analyzed patterns like career progression speed, compensation competitiveness, skills demand in the market, engagement survey data, internal mobility history. The system didn't say this person will quit tomorrow. It said there is a high probability this person may leave in the next 6 to 12 months. That is completely different level of insight. And according to IBM leaders, the model achieved high predictive accuracy, allowing managers to proactively intervene, not react. Predictive retention models use historical data to identify patterns that typically precede a voluntary turnover. Think about it. Before someone resigns, there are usually signals: declining engagement, fewer internal applications, pay stagnation, reduced participation, changes in performance trends. At Google, people analytics teams studied employee data to understand why certain groups were leaving. They discovered career stagnation was a stronger driver of attrition than compensation in some roles. That insight changed how they approach internal mobility and promotion timelines. Instead of assuming money solves everything, they focused on growth conversations. That is the power of predictive modeling. It challenges assumptions. Now let's imagine a practical scenario. A predictive model flags a senior engineer as high risk. What happens next? The worst response, monitoring them silently. The right response, a conversation. At companies using platforms like Workday, predictive analytics integrates with HR dashboards, allowing HR and leaders to see retention in risk patterns across departments. But smart organizations don't weaponize this data. They use it to accelerate promotion discussions, adjust a compensation strategically, offer development opportunities, improve manager engagement. Because retention isn't about manipulation, it is about removing friction. Here is something very important. Predictive models don't replace human leadership, they guide it. For example, if data shows that employees under a certain manager have higher attrition risk, the solution isn't punishment, it is coaching, it is leadership development, it is understanding workload, communication style, or career planning gaps. Data surface patterns, leaders solve problems. Let's talk numbers. Replacing a high performing employee can cost 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary. Now multiply that across dozens of exits in critical roles. Retention becomes a financial strategy. Companies like LinkedIn provide labor market insights that help organizations see external hiring trends. When combined with internal predictive retention data, leaders can identify where they are most vulnerable to talent poaching. Imagine knowing your competitors are aggressively hiring data scientists and your predictive model shows rising attrition risk in your analytics team. That is a strategic intelligence. But here is the caution. Employees don't want to feel like algorithms are spying on them. Transparency is critical. Organizations must clearly communicate what data is being used, why it is being analyzed, how it benefits employees. Productive retention should empower career development, not create suspicion. Trust is everything. Traditional HR says, why did they leave? Predictive HR says, how do we make sure they stay? And that shift changes everything. When HR can walk into an executive meeting and say, if we don't address career mobility in this division, we risk losing 15% of our high performers within the next year. That is not HR reporting, that is a risk management, and that is a strategy. So, bottom line is predictive retention models don't eliminate turnover, but they reduce the surprises. They transform HR from reactive firefighter to proactive architect. Because in modern organizations, talent loss isn't just an HR problem, it is a competitive risk. And the companies that can anticipate it, they don't just retain employees, they protect performance. Let's dive into point number 4 of this episode, HR systems like Workday or Oracle. A few years ago, Maria, the CHRO of Unilever, walked into a tense executing meeting. The CEO asked a simple question: do we have the right talent to support our digital growth next year? Silence. Not because HR didn't care, but because the data lived everywhere. Recruitment data was in one system, performance reviews were in PDFs, learning records were in another program platform, a workforce planning set in Excel sheets. Maria didn't lack talent, she lacked visibility. That is when Unilever began consolidating its global HR operations into modern cloud systems. And everything changed. Let's fast forward. Now, instead of chasing spreadsheets, Maria opens a single dashboard. She sees real time headcount across 90 plus countries, skills inventory by region, flight risk predictions powered by AI, succession plans for critical roles. With platforms like Workday, companies can integrate recruitment, payroll, performance, and workforce planning into one ecosystem. With Oracle Human Capital Management, organizations use AI to match candidates to roles, recommend learning paths, and forecast workforce gaps. Another example, when IBM implemented AI driven HR tools, they used predictive analytics to identify employees likely to leave. Reportedly, with a high accuracy, instead of reacting to resignations, HR could intervene early. Automation wasn't replacing HR, it was upgrading HR. But then came the fear. At a town hall, an employee raised her hand. If AI is screening resumes and recommending promotions, where is the human judgment? That question captures the heart of today's debate. Is HR technology an opportunity or a threat? Let's consider recruitment. AI can scan thousands of resumes in seconds. It can reduce manual bias by standardizing evaluation criteria. It can improve time to hire. Companies like Unilever have even used AI driven assessments and digital interviews to streamline hiring at scale. But here is attention: algorithms learn from historical data, and historical data may contain bias. If we automate without auditing, we risk scaling bias instead of eliminating it. Imagine two scenarios. Scenario 1, fully automated HR. An employee applies for internal mobility. AI scores their skills. The system rejects the application. No conversation, no context, no understanding of potential. Was it efficient? Yes. Was it human? No. Look at the scenario 2, augmented HR. AI suggests this employee has 70% skills match. Recommend training in two areas: Now, HR partners step in. They coach, they mentor, they design development plans. The technology becomes a decision support system, not a decision maker. That is the difference between automation and augmentation. Before modern HR systems, HR was often transactional, processing payroll, managing paperwork, tracking attendance. After implementing platforms like Workday and Oracle, many global organizations position HR as a strategic advisors. Instead of asking, did we process salaries? They now ask, do we have the skills for the future? Where is leadership risk? How diverse is our pipeline? What will automation do to our workforce mix? Technology didn't remove HR's relevance, it amplified it. So, is this opportunity or threat? Let's look into that. HR technology becomes a threat when we trust algorithms blindly, or we remove empathy from decisions, or we measure people only through data. It becomes an opportunity when we use AI to eliminate repetitive tasks. We free HR teams to focus on coaching and culture. We combine data with human judgment. The future isn't AI versus HR, it is AI plus HR. So the bottom line is at the next executive meeting, Maria didn't just answer the CEO's question. She projected a workforce a dashboard and said, here is where we are. Here is where we are going, and here is a talent strategy to get us there. Technology gave her data, but leadership gave it meaning. Because at the end of the day, HR systems like Workday and Oracle, they don't manage people. People manage people. Technology just helps them do it better. Let's dive into last topic of this episode, ethical concerns in hiring. In 2018, a talented software engineer submitted her application to one of the world's most innovative companies like Amazon. She had strong experience, relevant certifications, great performance history, but her resume never reached a recruiter. Do you know why? Because an experimental AI recruiting tool quietly filtered it out. Later, it became public that Amazon had developed an AI system trained on historical hiring data. Then what was the problem? The data reflected years of male dominated tech hiring. That was a problem. The algorithm began penalizing resumes that included indicators associated with a woman, even something as subtle as the word women's in club affiliations. Amazon eventually scrapped the tool, but the question remained, when AI learns from history, does it also inherit our bias? Now, let's be fair. AI in hiring didn't emerge to discriminate, it emerged to solve a real problem. Large organizations receive tens of thousands, sometimes millions, of applications annually. Take companies like Unilever. To manage global recruitment at a scale, Unilever introduced AI driven screening and digital interviews. Candidates completed online games and video interviews. Algorithms assessed competencies and facial cues to shortlist applicants. The results were impressive. Reduced time to hire, lower recruitment costs, broader global reach, increased application volume. Efficiency skyrocketed, but critics began asking, are we measuring talent or patterns? Let me tell you another story. A data scientist once explained AI hiring this way. An algorithm doesn't understand fairness, it understands correlation. If historically a company hired more graduates from certain universities, the system may learn to prioritize those institutions. If leadership roles were historically dominated by one demographic group, predictive models may recommend a similar profiles. The machine isn't intentionally biased, it is statistically consistent. That is what makes it dangerous. Imagine this scenario. James applies for a job. He's switching careers at 14. His resume isn't perfectly keyword optimized. An AI screening tool scores him low. No recruiter ever sees his story. No one learns about his leadership experience in community projects. No one asks about resilience, adaptability, or emotional intelligence. He receives an automated rejection email, fast, efficient, emotionless. Now multiply that by thousands. That is the ethical tension. Companies like IBM and Microsoft have invested heavily in AI ethics frameworks, recognizing the risks. Governments have also stepped in. New regulations in some regions require companies to audit AI systems for bias and transparency. Why? Because hiring decisions affect livelihoods. Unlike product recommendations or targeted ads, hiring shapes income, career trajectory, social mobility, representation in leadership. The stakes are human. Ethical questions we must ask. Do candidates know AI is screening them? Can a company explain why someone was rejected? Are algorithms regularly tested across gender, race, age, and socioeconomic factors? Is AI assisting recruiters or replacing judgment entirely? Here is the truth: AI in hiring is not inherently unethical. Used responsibly, it can reduce human bias, expand candidate pools, improve consistency, identify overlooked talent, but ethics requires intention. The future of AI hiring isn't about removing humans, it is about designing systems where AI handles a scale, humans handle nuance. AI identifies patterns, human interpret potential. AI filters the data, humans make decisions. Now let's go back to that candidate at Amazon. The system didn't reject her because it hated women. It rejected her because it reflected the past. And that is a real danger of AI in hiring. If we automate yesterday's biases, we scale yesterday's inequality. But if we design thoughtfully, audit continuously, and keep humans accountable, AI can help us build a fairer workforce than history ever allowed. The question is not should we use AI in hiring? The real question is are we building systems that reflect our values or just our data? Because in the end, hiring is not just a technical process, it is a moral one. Let me conclude this episode of Beer HR series. We explore how companies like Unilever, IBM, and Amazon use AI in recruitment, predictive retention, and people analytics. We discuss how platforms like Workday and Oracle are transforming HR from reactive to strategic. But we also tackle ethical concerns in AI hiring and algorithm bias. Bottom line is, technology should elevate human connection, not eliminate it. HR's future isn't AI versus people, it is always AI plus empathy. Thank you so much